Just 2 milligrams of fentanyl can kill you in a matter of minutes. That's the same size as a few grains of sand. And worse, not all fentanyl is the same. At this very moment, masked men in homemade labs are cooking up newer and even more lethal versions of fentanyl, and those literal chemical weapons are headed straight to the USA. It is this ever-expanding synthetic nightmare that we'll discuss in today's episode of The Infographic Show. What does fentanyl do to your body? Sadly, there are people out there who seek the strongest opioids, despite the DEA's warnings that fentanyl is killing Americans at an unprecedented rate. Many who take it are unaware of its deadly potential. In 2022, a group of teenagers bought what they thought was a fairly mild prescription opioid pill, Percocet, when in fact their perks had been contaminated with fentanyl. One of the teens, a 15-year-old girl, was found dead in the bathroom at Bernstein High School in Hollywood. 2 more teens were discovered unconscious at the nearby Lexington Park. They had no idea the pills they dropped were 33 to 66 times stronger than the ones they thought they had bought. As you'll see later in this video, this kind of thing is happening all over the USA and to a lesser extent in Europe. Experts are calling it the 4th wave of the opioid crisis. The first wave to wash over America's shores was in the 1990s and the early 2000s, when unscrupulous pharmaceutical companies came out with new opioid drugs. Physicians started overprescribing them for general pain management, paving the way for widespread misuse. Patients with conditions like back pain were prescribed powerful opioids, drugs that in some cases had addictive properties comparable to heroin. This approach led to devastating consequences, affecting millions of Americans, with the impact still being felt today. Pharmaceutical companies took advantage of the unique ability to advertise directly to consumers, painting the picture of blissful pain relief. This led to over 255 million opioid prescriptions in 2012, contributing to a nationwide epidemic that affected 12.5 million Americans. The second wave, starting in 2010, saw a huge increase in heroin overdoses. This included many of the people who'd become addicted to prescription opioids. When their prescription sources dried up, many who had become addicted to opioids turned to heroin, experiencing the harsh realities of addiction. Then came the third wave, the rise in synthetic opioid deaths, including those from fentanyl. The fourth wave that's currently making a toxic splash is when fentanyl or something similar ends up killing someone when that person had no idea the drug they took contained one of those super strong synthetics. Later, we'll discuss something even stronger than fentanyl, but at first let's have a look at some numbers. In the late 1970s, America was in the middle of a deadly silent crisis. Each year, around 3,000 Americans suffered lethal overdoses. Despite the Just Say No campaign in the 1980s, overdoses continued to climb from around 2,500 to 5,000 a year. The numbers began to skyrocket, from just over 17,000 deaths in 2000 to a staggering 91,000 by 2020, a surge that would only get worse. By 2022, the death toll reached a grim milestone of just over 111,000, an all-time high. Fentanyl was involved in over 76,000 lethal overdoses in 2022, around 75,000 in 2023. The question is, why would anyone knowingly take this stuff? Like all opioids, fentanyl is a very dangerous pleasure generator that provides a high the user can't escape, even when it's tearing their life apart. Opioids trigger a release of one of the brain's so-called happy chemicals, dopamine. You get a rush of dopamine from an orgasm or from winning a game. But opioids are like a cheat system that floods your brain with torrents of dopamine. The dopamine also floods into a part of your brain responsible for controlling fear and anxiety, the amygdala, making the user feel relaxed. Who wouldn't like that? Answer: about 60 million people worldwide who currently take some kind of opioid. The majority of these people take their opioid prescription for chronic pain, often end-of-life pain. When you're in pain, your body releases stress-relieving hormones, natural opioids in your brain called endorphins. Opioid drugs mimic natural endorphins by blocking pain signals and elevating mood. Those with a history of trauma are especially vulnerable to opioid dependence. Smoking fentanyl is far deadlier than traditional heroin, even in small doses. In a recent study, people who injected fentanyl were 40% more likely than smokers to overdose. Still, in 2024, it was reported that in the US there are now more fatal smoking drug deaths than injecting deaths, and that's because of fentanyl. Fentanyl is often mixed with heroin, increasing the risk of fatal overdoses. One Massachusetts user said he always knows when his heroin is mixed with fentanyl because it tastes sweet, probably because it was cut with sugar, but it's not always easy to know what you're taking. Different opioids have different mechanisms of action. Some give less euphoria and better pain relief, But the ones on the streets, including fentanyl, are the ones that create the most bliss. Fentanyl hits faster and leaves your body faster, so you quickly need more. A long-term user explained, "The rush is way better than heroin, but it only lasts a couple of hours and then you're sick again. Heroin will last half a day." Another said, "You really feel like you're King Kong or Godzilla. The rush is 10 times stronger." Many users say they don't like the synthetic feeling, and for some, the high risk of dying makes them prefer using heroin. Opioid withdrawal can feel like your body is betraying you. It's not just the physical symptoms, vomiting, sweats, and restless legs that hit hard. The emotional roller coaster, like all your pain coming back at once, feels unbearable. And while the worst of the physical symptoms might only last for a few days, the emotional wounds can last much longer. For fentanyl users, the symptoms might hit faster, but it's the speed that makes it even more dangerous. What makes fentanyl terrifying is it's not just the high, it's the fact that you can be breathing one moment and in less than 2 minutes you could be dead. 2 minutes, just like that. And if you mix your fentanyl with other drugs that work on the central nervous system, such as alcohol and benzodiazepines, your game of Russian roulette just added 2 more bullets. And while we're talking about Russian roulette, there's a drug the DEA has called the deadliest drug the US has ever faced. It's called xylazine or tranq, but you might know it by its street name, zombie drug. Its strong sedative qualities often leave users with their bodies slumped, arms dangling, and their face seemingly in zombie mode due to the muscles not functioning properly. Xylazine is very cheap, only $6 to $20 for a kilo of the raw powder. So add it to some heroin or fentanyl, and a person can disappear into their narcotic slumber for just a handful of dollars. Originally used to sedate animals, especially horses, xylazine has now invaded America's most dystopian neighborhoods, like Kensington, Philadelphia, also famously known as the Walmart of heroin. Here, around 90% of the drug supply is laced with xylazine. The purity of the fentanyl there is also relatively high, usually around 15%. The problem is many of the chemicals needed to make fentanyl and other synthetics are found in agrochemicals and regular pharmaceuticals. It takes cartels a few hours in homemade labs to do what used to take months of labor in poppy fields. They produce much smaller amounts that are easier to traffic and harder for the authorities to detect. Recently in Tijuana, a lab was busted, and along with kilos of fentanyl powder were presses to make the tablets. The prices of fentanyl on the streets have hit shocking lows, especially when you consider its devastating impact. Depending on where you're buying, single pills can cost as little as 50 cents, but they generally go for $3 to $5. In San Francisco, an addict said a tenth of a gram of fentanyl powder might cost $5 to $10. Occasionally, you might see high-quality stuff going for $25 or more. Of course, that's not pure fentanyl. Compare that to heroin, where a tenth of a gram will set most Americans back about $15. Sometimes less, sometimes more. Recently, fentanyl in San Francisco, usually 5% to 10% purity, went from being $100 there for a tenth of a gram bag in 2022 to $60 for 3 in 2023. The price drop shows how cheap and accessible the drug has become, and this just fuels the opioid crisis and makes it harder for law enforcement and health officials to keep up. Getting high has never been so cheap in the US, and so deadly. Some of the worst places for overdoses have been Alaska, West Virginia, Rhode Island, Hawaii, and California. In California from 2021 to 2023, fentanyl seizures went up from a street value of just $64 million to around $650 million. As for the fentanyl hotspot of Rhode Island, some of the recent deaths and hospitalizations were people who had taken fentanyl-laced cocaine and even fentanyl-laced counterfeit Adderall pills. Experts said you could buy a pill with just 1% of fentanyl in it, but another pill could have 70% fentanyl. If it's the latter, you better hope you'd spent $2 on a fentanyl test strip. In 2021, in small towns on Long Island, 5 men and 1 woman died after taking fentanyl-laced cocaine in the space of a weekend. One of the fatalities was found dead, and on his phone was a text message from his friend warning him that the coke had fent in it. He was already dead by the time the message arrived. The traffickers are not intending to kill people with these fentanyl-laced pills and powder. That would be bad for business. Most people who take a contaminated line of coke or a contaminated counterfeit Xanax don't die. They're designed to be highly enjoyable, so people will come back for more. But the odds are someone, somewhere will get that little bit extra or take too much. When only 2 milligrams can kill, a little extra in a pill or a bag of coke can make someone pass out and never come back, especially if they've drunk alcohol. Worse, there are stronger versions of fentanyl, like carfentanil, which is about 100 times more potent than just fentanyl, so 10,000 times stronger than morphine. That means a lethal dose might be just 20 micrograms, about the size of a grain of sand. It's believed out of about 1,400 fentanyl analogs, 12 have entered the global market. Carfentanil and another ocfentanil are both insanely strong and have been responsible for overdose deaths in the US and Europe, such as a 24-year-old man in Switzerland who ordered some powder from the dark web containing ocfentanil and was later found dead in his bedroom. There have been carfentanil deaths all over the US. Back in 2016-2017, it was responsible for about 1 in every 15 American opioid deaths. It's been found in counterfeit OxyContin, cocaine, fake Xanax, and even synthetic marijuana. It is a deadly poison that has the consolation prize of making you feel good before you nod off for eternity. The alternative can be devastating too. If someone wakes you with a shot of Narcan, your brain might have been starved of oxygen long enough to render you brain dead. The world is awash with these synthetic drugs, and there is no end in sight. In 2023, the DEA seized 80 million fentanyl-laced fake pills and about 12,000 pounds of fentanyl powder, enough to kill every American. With so many analogs out there that are easy to make and much easier to traffic, and with the West's seemingly insatiable demand, we might have to rethink how we fight this never-ending war on drugs. Now you need to watch New Street Drug That Rots Your Skin, the zombie drug, or have a look at what happens to your brain if you smoke weed for 30 days.